Hello everyone, I greet in the name of God Almighty. My name is Apostle Nathan Silas and today we have a very interesting video to react to. And today we're going to learn about the untold story about slavery. We're going to look at how did slavery comes about. We could also look at, race, human race, and how those things, contribute, into slavery, and how all these stories are not being taught, in the school. I believe that when you listen to this video, it's gonna help you to increase your knowledge. Of course, we all learn, every day. We get to know about, new things, that has happened in the past and also in the present, and things that are yet to happen, right? So I hope that we are going to learn a lot, as far as this video is concerned. It's just a 8-minute video, so I want us to just listen to it, and then God is going to bless us, as we do so. So if today happens to be the first time of you checking out my channel, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me on my Facebook and Instagram. And if you have any video you want me to react to, don't forget to drop it at the comment section and I'm going to check it out. So guys, before we get on to the video, I'm a theologian and I make this video not to discredit anyone's religion. This is basically for educational purposes, and I believe that at the end of this video we all are going to learn from this. So let's get on to this video and then check this out.
The instrumental use of the history of slavery today also underlies the claim that slavery grew out of racism. For most of its long history, which includes most of the history of the human race, slavery was largely not the enslavement of racially different people, for the simple reason that only in recent centuries has either the technology or the wealth existed to go to another continent to get slaves and transport them en masse across an ocean. People were enslaved because they were vulnerable, not because of how they looked. The peoples of the Balkans were enslaved by fellow Europeans, as well as by the peoples of the Middle East, for at least 6 centuries before the first African was brought to the Western Hemisphere. Before the modern era, by and large, Europeans enslaved other Europeans, Asians enslaved other Asians, Africans enslaved other Africans, and the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere enslaved other indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere. Slavery was not based on race, much less on theories about race. Only relatively late in history did enslavement across racial lines occur on such a scale as to promote an ideology of racism that outlasted the institution of slavery itself. Wherever a separate people were enslaved, they were disdained or despised, whether they were different by country, religion, caste, race, or tribe. In East Africa, the Maasai were feared slave raiders, and other African tribes, either alone or in conjunction with Arabs, enslaved their more vulnerable neighbors. As late as 1891, it was reported that Manyuema slavers had demoralized surrounding tribes, destroying crops, and famine reigned everywhere. Even in the early 20th century, Abyssinians were still raiding other Africans and carrying off slaves. It was 1922 before the British had gained sufficient control in Tanganyika to stamp out slavery there. Arabs were the leading slave raiders in East Africa, ranging over an area larger than all of Europe. The total number of slaves exported from East Africa during the 19th century has been estimated to be at least 2 million. The form in which the story of slavery has reached most people today has been along the lines of the best-selling book and widely watched television miniseries Roots by Alex Haley. Challenged on the historical accuracy of Roots, Haley said, "I tried to give my people a myth to live by." This instrumental use of history, or purported history, is open to the same objections as other instrumental myth-making. Despite the impression created by Roots, during the era of the massive slave trade from West Africa, a white man was more likely to catch malaria in Africa than to catch slaves himself. The average life expectancy of a white man in the interior of sub-Saharan Africa at that time was less than 1 year. By and large, men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere came to the coasts of Africa, bought their slaves, and left as soon as possible. Even so, the death rates among the white crews of the ships carrying slaves to the Western Hemisphere were as high as the death rates among the slaves themselves. It was only much later, after quinine and other medical measures enabled Europeans to survive where there were tropical diseases, was it possible for them to invade Africa in force and establish empires there. But by then, the Atlantic slave trade had already been ended. During the era of that trade, Africa was largely ruled by Africans, who established the conditions under which slave sales took place. The crew of a slave ship was in no position to defy African rulers and their armies by going out across the land and capturing people willy-nilly. The stronger African peoples captured and enslaved the weaker peoples. The same pattern found over the centuries in Europe, Asia, the Western Hemisphere, and Polynesia. In Nyasaland, the Ngoni and Yao swaggered over and terrorized other tribes. In Uganda, the Baganda made life miserable for their neighbors, and the Nyoro and Hima of Untold enslaved Toro women and children. The Tutsi dominated the Hutu in Rwanda, the Maasai lorded it over the Kikuyu and Kamba, and the latter, in turn, held the Indorobo in a kind of serfdom. It was precisely the fact that Europeans, except for the Portuguese, seldom participated in the raids that captured and enslaved Africans that enabled most people in Europe and the Americas to remain oblivious to the traumatic experience that this was, with some Africans committing suicide to avoid capture and wives being whipped as they tried to cling to their husbands or children. Historian David Breon Davis pointed out that Europeans had little contact with the actual process of enslavement, and that, as late as 1721, the Royal African Company asked its agents to investigate the modes of enslavement in the interior. Europeans typically saw only the end results, enslaved people being offered for sale on the coast. It was much the same story in the Ottoman Empire, where those who bought slaves had no idea what these slaves had been through before. The unique position of the Western world in the history, and especially the destruction of slavery, need not imply that there was unanimity within the West on this institution. In addition to whites who defended the enslavement of Africans on racial grounds, or who opposed general emancipation on social grounds, there were many whites, and even blacks, who defended slavery as a matter of self-interest as slave owners. Although most black owners of slaves in the United States were only nominal owners of members of their own families, there were thousands of other blacks in the antebellum South who were commercial slave owners, just like their white counterparts. An estimated 1/3 of the free persons of color in New Orleans were slave owners, and thousands of these slave owners volunteered to fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Black slave owners were even more common in the Caribbean. In short, there were many defenders of slavery in the West, even in the 19th century. And outside the West, slavery was too widely accepted to require defense. No other nation ended slavery in the same way as the United States did, and few ended it after so short a struggle, as history is measured. How and why did slavery end in most of the world? There were two major processes. Over the centuries, as more and more territories around the world consolidated into nation-states with their own armies and navies, raiding those territories to capture and enslave the people who lived within them became more hazardous in itself, and also risked military retaliation against the countries from which the raiders came. Thus, more and more peoples became off-limits to slave raiders over time. Put differently, the areas which remained subject to slave raiding over the centuries were primarily those where the people lived in smaller or weaker societies. Such societies continued to exist where it was difficult, for geographic or other reasons, to consolidate large areas under one government. This was true of the Balkans, the backwaters of Asia, and much of sub-Saharan Africa. By the early modern era, sub-Saharan Africa, with its numerous and severe geographic handicaps, was one of the last remaining areas from which vast numbers of people could be
Oh,
enslaved.
this is a very interesting video, watching some of this untold story about slavery that is not being taught, you understand, in our institution. Now, some of the things that this very person was pointed out, understand, in the video was actually true. People get enslaved, you understand, once they are vulnerable, and these are some of the reasons why some people, you understand, get enslaved, just like how the video put it. But I want to state that in as much as the slavery may not be about physically exchanging, you know, or buying of people, just like how it was done many century years ago. But at the moment, there is still, in a sense, slavery that is still happening in Africa. Why do I say that, in a sense, there is still slavery in Africa? Is, you see, when some of these European or some of the Western, you understand, countries, you understand, came to Africa, right? They came to the sense of bringing religion. And in the process of doing that, they got to realize that Africa is full of so many resources, and then therefore end up, you understand, colonizing, you understand, some of these African countries. As a matter of fact, I think it is only Ethiopia that is one of the African countries that was not, you understand, colonized, but all of the rest were colonized and are still colonized up till today. Probably many might argue and said that some of them have gained independence and then all that, and then they are free, you understand, from all this colonization, because this slavery comes with colonization. Now, you could look at what is actually happening in the sub-Saharan, you understand, nowadays, and that result to so many youth, you understand, decide to go for this coup d'etat. This coup d'etat, you understand, you are seeing, these are as a result of the slavery. As a matter of fact, like I rightly say, Africans are still under, you understand, slavery, in the sense that if you look at it, in a sense, critically, you got to realize that most of the West Africans were being colonized by France. Yeah, France. And that's why I see most of the Francophone countries, you understand, in the sub-Sahara, you understand, under the French, you understand, colony, and are still on the French colony. People will say to me that, Apostle, these people have already gained independence. Yes, it's true. On paper, they have gained independence. But in real life, they are still not, in a sense, gotten independence. And why am I saying so? These people, you understand, if you look at it, look at the export of Burkina Faso. France gained 50% of all their export. Is it supposed to be so? Is that not slavery? How do you think the country is going to develop? Look at what that is actually happening currently in Niger. That's why I see the military decide to take over. I'm not saying that I support, you understand, this coup d'etat, but because of the people are tired. The people are tired. They have resources and they are suffering. Look at, you understand, France now. They survive, right? 10% of what, you understand, they make, you understand, from that uranium, you understand, is from where? It's from Niger. But is the Niger people, you understand, enjoying, you understand, what they are supposed to be enjoying? The answer is no. When we talk about people, you understand, that are very poor today, you could actually, Niger could become one of them. Maybe top 5 in the world, no, one of them. And these are people that are actually helping to boost the economy of France. Why should these people, you understand, be suffering? Why? Because they are under what? Slavery. The higher class who's supposed to defend them, what is happening to them? What are they doing? They have actually sold their people to the French. And that is why what? They are suffering. This is a reality of life that is happening. I am just using that as an example. And this thing is also same applicable to what? To Guinea. This thing is still applicable to what? Burkina Faso. This is also applicable to what? Mali, Congo, Nigeria. See, let me tell you something. You see all these countries, they have resources that can actually be able to take care of Africa. Look at Congo. But what is actually happening in Congo? Look at, you understand, the Mali or the Niger. Can we even talk about the resources that is even found in Nigeria? All these countries, you understand, are blessed. But why are they still suffering? Why are the people still suffering? It's because the people of the higher class have decided to sold us out. And that is why we see, you understand, we are suffering. This is the reason why you see Africa are still suffering. This is why we see we are still in slavery. The slavery may not be, you understand, the selling of the people physically, but we are being enslaved in our own land. Like, why do we have to leave even our country, move to the West, move to the American, you understand, countries to go and get better life, where we have all it takes, you understand, to have a better life? This is the slavery I'm talking about. It is only God, you understand, who will save us. And this slavery don't even care whether you are a Christian or you are a Muslim. All these things, in a sense, is happening. You can't tell me that when it is happening in Niger, that all the Nigerians, in a sense, are Muslim or they are Christians. You see what I'm talking about? Or even in Nigeria. Look at Nigeria, one of the most populous, you understand, people, you understand, in the world, right? The black nation in the world. But what is happening to them? They have all the resources. Why are they still poor? What of Burkina Faso? What of Congo? What of Tanzania? What is happening? What is happening to us? These are the slavery I'm talking about. These things know no religion. People have just, you know, instead of people, you understand, to be doing things that can be able to like bring peace, for people to be able to enjoy the dividends of democracy. Just like how, you understand, we always talk about the democracy is all about, you understand, the people. But is the democracy really about the people? Are they really doing what the people really want? This is the situation we have find ourselves. And this is the slavery I'm talking about. It is only God in heaven that can be able to save us. Why do I have to leave my country and go to another country to go and seek refuge? Whereas I have a country that is blessed with all the resources. May God help us all. Sorry I have to come up in a sense this way, but then this is just the reality. Now, they want to even turn, you understand, the Africa into a war zone. Well, I know a lot will have a lot of things, you understand, to say concerning this video. I wanted to drop it at the comment section because this is really happening, and this slavery is really crippling, you understand, Africa. It's actually taking us, you understand, backward. May God have mercy on us. This is just the end of my video, and your thought and opinion are all welcome at the comment section. And I also want you to notify where you are actually watching me from, and God is going to bless you as you do so. Please, brothers and sisters, whatever position we find ourselves, let's try to be a blessing to other people. Let's not undermine people, but let's treat each other as equal, as humans. Okay, let's first accept that we are humans first, and not to take advantage of other people. Okay, if we want to do a business, let's do a business that will favor everybody. Let's not always understand everything has to be on our own interest. At least, I know that when you're doing a business, at least you're supposed to gain from it. But we should not overdo it. That's what I'm saying. We should not overdo it. Moreover, all these resources, we are going nowhere with it. Everything is going to end up here. May God have mercy on us. And bye-bye.